let's get started.
Yeah.
I'll just start sharing my screen.
Yeah. Continue.
All right. Okay. So as Rohit mentioned, we will be discussing more on the recent release from October, and that too with the products like StudioX and the system activities and robot assistant. So we will be discussing on the features that got released with these products in specific, so that if you are an attended board developer or if you are training a citizen or you are being a citizen developer, so you can connect to it, and then you can feel free to stop me at any point if you have any queries if I get through the slides. So on a short note, myself Palani, you can call me Palani, and then I'm from Bangalore. I work in Novo Nordisk as advanced business analyst, and then I was nominated and selected as MEP 2022. And you can see me mostly on forums and technical sessions like this, and then in-person meetups. So this is my forum profile, and then you can reach me out if you have any doubts, either to me or to Rohit, um, and we can collaboratively work to build the community and deliver more sessions like this. So UiPath community is actually vibrant enough so that it has different platforms where you can contribute, like forums and community events. And then we have, of course, Academy, where you can learn and train people through to different colleges and school sessions, like how Jobin and Rahul people are doing, who are there in this current call. And then we have Rohit, a pillar of UiPath community in a PAC region. Like if you want to discuss with him, like how we want to contribute, and then maybe for the next year, a couple of months, you can reach out to him through LinkedIn or through website, and you can even note on his number. I am just posting this with your permission, Rohit, if it's fine.
Yep, sure.
All right. So with that being said, let's get started with the agenda. Where today we'll be discussing on StudioX and the system activities, robot assistant, and then we'll have a separate session for Q&A. So it's going to be like more interactive. So I would just appreciate if you have any queries, please feel free to mention it at any point if you would like to. Right. So let's start with a light note. I'm pretty sure that everyone would have used StudioX or either Studio in your as an RPA developer in your day-to-day life. So if you have noted this in StudioX post this October, you can see colors fixed for each and every set of activities and packages. Say, for example, if it is an Excel kind of an activity and any activity under that Excel package, it will be of color green, so that when you are trying to debug or going through the workflow, it will be easy to identify based on the color code itself. So this sort of something, an improved version of your UI design with the studio, so that it will be easy for you to identify the activities on a short note, just seeing the design panel and the color of each and every activity. So maybe I will try to take you to the StudioX once and then show you a few activities. So this session will be like, I will explain you the feature, and I will also try to show you or even demo you with the features in UiPath Studio or StudioX. Okay. Just give me a second. Before that, I just would like to ensure, am I audible?
Yes,
Yes,
you are. Yeah.
yes, loud and clear. You are audible.
Yeah, thank you. So if you would like to look at these features, new features, I would recommend you to download the latest version from cloud.uipath.com. The moment you open the cloud orchestrator, you will be able to download the studio and the other products as an MSI file, and you can install that. So it will be having all the packages like Studio, StudioX, and Robot. So before you start exploring the features, either if you have enabled the auto update in your machine, then automatically the UiPath will get updated. Or if not, then you need to download it from cloud.uipath.com, and then only you'll be able to see all these features. Now I have enabled the auto update in my machine. So I have the studio already installed and opened in my system. So let me try to take you to that StudioX and then show you those features. Second. Okay. So I'll just try to create a new one where it's a blank tab. This is actually StudioX. And if you have Studio opened in your machine, if you want to switch it to StudioX, in the meantime, you can get into settings and you can choose license and profile. There you can choose change profile to get and shift between Studio and StudioX. 1 second. Yeah. So now it's already in StudioX. So if I try to open, let me try to open the already existing one. So previously we had a session on the recent updates with Studio, and you can find that in YouTube. And also we have that recordings in community of UiPathCommunity.com, so that if you want to refer on Studio in specific, you can check with that event link. So you'll get to know about all the new features that got released with Studio in specific. And just give me a few seconds. I think it takes some time to load.
Sure. Hey, while this is going on, I just had a quick question. So, I was working with the StudioX templates. That's like my go-to place. But you know that now Internet Explorer is no longer available, and all the templates are configured with Internet Explorer as their browser. So, what is the fastest way of replacing these activities? Because, I don't know what the template, how it has been configured. So, actually, I've been spending a lot of time to change browser and then update activities. So what do you think we can instead do?
Okay. So if you see in cloud, UiPath cloud.com, right? That is the orchestrator. You'll be able to see the resource tab, or you'll be able to place where you can download the products of UiPath, right? There is one specific product for this browser conversion. That is a browser conversion tool. So with that tool, if you have already built any bot with IE Explorer, and if you would like to migrate to any browser, you feel like either Chrome or Firefox, then with that conversion tool, you'll be able to convert that. So I would recommend you to look onto that browser conversion tool, which is available in our, it's just an exe file. I guess you can install in your machine and then you can use that application. So this is for something that if you have already built a bot with that template, and that if the template has that IE browser. So because we also had this issue in our organization, and then we were trying to use that conversion tool, and that was a recommendation from UiPath, like a tag from UiPath. So, so I would recommend the same for you as well.
Thank you. Yep. I'll definitely take a look at that. Yep.
Maybe you can search in browser like browser conversion tool from UiPath, so that it will direct you the same document, and you'll get idea like how it can be migrated or converted.
Sure,
This is something
absolutely.
it's already existing, but of course, if you're doing something new, you can go for the new browser like Edge and Chrome, right? So,
Right, because actually the templates are pre-configured and I already am using a version. So I'm not freshly downloading StudioX. So in that I am facing this template issue.
yeah. So let me try to drag few activities which are just available by default. If you see here, if I try to click on mail, it will be of this color, surrounded it with it. And if I try to click on Excel, you can see it will be of like green. I thought each and every activity will be having some color code so that you'll be easily able to catch it. Okay, this is the side. You don't need to drag up or down to see the name of the activity. So this is something made on a very user interface perspective. So people who are developing and debugging on a regular basis, it will be really helpful for them. So as a next step, let's go for the next feature. If you see project compatibility selection. So whenever you're creating a project in StudioX as a citizen developer, you might be working in different platforms. It can be Linux or Unix or Windows, or sometimes you might develop now in Windows, but it might get deployed in different platforms. That is what we call it as cross-platform projects, right? So in order to ensure that, okay, whenever you are developing that project should be compatible with other platforms, you can ensure why even before you start developing the project. And that can be chosen with this settings while you are creating a new project. If you see here, the left corner of the screen, there is a tab called compatibility under which we have three different options in a drop down. And you can choose cross-platform, Windows or Windows Legacy, so that it ensures that your project is compatible with different cross-platform and you can run it in anywhere. So but by default, if you don't choose any of this, it will be of Windows. So this will be very useful for business people who work on different platforms and if they want to host their works on different platforms. So this is another feature which is there in Studio and they've included with Studio X as well. Okay, now this is what Kalyani, you mentioned, the marketplace templates. So now you got an option to export it from marketplace, or you can even create a template for StudioX and specific in marketplace. And then you can tag them here in your local StudioX, and then you can refer it and then use it. So early it was more on Studio, right? So now you can even upload for StudioX. That's what they have included with this release. So there is one another feature who looks for more custom components and reusable components. So this is another feature added with StudioX since August of this year. So the next one, this is something very interesting. I hope you people would have worked with workflow analyzer in your studio. So this is something more on a compliance or what to say, to maintain the best practice perspective. So if you see, whenever you deploy a project, before you deploy, you'll be actually looking on all the best practices, whether it's being performed or not, like naming conventions, whether unwanted message box or delays or write lines are used in the project or not, or is it as per your company policy or not. So with this workflow analyzer, you will be able to perform all these kind of validations. So now with that workflow analyzer was already there in StudioX, but they have added few features with the workflow analyzer to enhance your uh, way you work with workflow analyzer. If you see, there is a search option available in workflow analyzer with the recent release, where you can look for any specific code or rules, and then you can edit it and then do it. So earlier it was like you need to scroll up and down and then you need to search for it, because to find a specific name of a rule, it's tough to either remember the code or the name. So you can just, if you want to check whether the specific project has that rule or not, you can just search it here in the search tab, and then it will display you and filter you out. And there is also another tab at the bottom, which is recently released with this 22.10, that is called allowed package option. So this will permit only the package listed there, and this field can accept any kind of a wildcard with the name. Like say, for example, if you want to include only the UiPath packages, which comes by default, you can mention that UiPath.store so that it will include only those rules, those packages. So this feature is something recently added in StudioX, and it is also available in Studio as well. All right, this is something person who gets into StudioX for the very first time. So say, for example, if I'm introduced to StudioX and then I want to know, like, okay, how each and every panel works, then there is a kind of a first run tool, a kind of a discovering tool of each and every panel. Like it tries to explain the each and every panel, like this is how it works. So now that option has been enabled with StudioX, and then you can get to learn about the different aspects of StudioX. So this is something that it's also available in Studio. I'm pretty sure like most of the features that got released with Studio are now with StudioX. So there's something, an additional feature for people who are using StudioX. So early it was like features were releasing on Studio and Robot, but now the citizen developers emerging more, and then StudioX plays a very vital role in every organization in terms of citizen development program. So now all the features are now getting added to StudioX, and it is really getting matured like how Studio is working now. All right. Okay, this is something everyone will be discussing as a key note when it comes to this 22.10 release. So be it Studio or user or a StudioX user, this data manager feature is something really impressive one. The reason being like this, through this data manager, right? It is something that one-stop shop for you to manage all the resources. Like if you want to if you want to view all the variables that you are using in the workflow, you can just get to this data manager and see that you don't need to get into each and every workflow and then look at it and then try to open the panel and see like what is the scope, what is the default value. You don't need to drag and open each and every workflow. One-stop shop is that you can get into data manager and see all the variables, all the arguments, assets, queues, entities, and processes. So I would like to highlight what are the functionalities that you can perform with this data manager features. So if you see here, first thing, you can open or you can create or edit an already existing variable or argument that is created anywhere in your project. So say for example, you have 15 or even 100 workflows. If you want to know the variables created in one or other workflow, you don't need to search for it and then click that and then find the variables and arguments. You can just get into data manager and then see like, okay, these are the arguments and variables created under that workflow. You can even group by that. So those are this is about the first 2 points. And then the third one is, of course, we can use the orchestrator resources like asserts, queues, and you can view what are the asserts and queues created under the specific folder and to the folder where the UiPath Studio is connected. So you can also view those details, and then you can view and navigate to all activity cards. I'll try to explain you once this slide is over, I'll get into Studio and show you all these features. And then, of course, you don't need to switch back and forth with multiple panels and workflows. It is one place where you can refer everything. And then this group by variable panels, variables and arguments, something you can, if you once you open a variable panel for one specific workflow, and if you want to know only for that specific scope, this group by or variables and arguments will help you to group by based on the scope, and then it will display you, okay, these are the variables and these are the arguments which are available under this scope and this workflow. So that is what is about even the sync with activity scope. So at last, filtering. Filtering is what I mentioned, and you try to type in the variable, it will try to filter it out and then show you all the variables that are available in with a naming convention available in all the workflows. Or if you have any specific naming convention, it will try to filter you out and then show you those variables and arguments. So now maybe I'll try to show you that in the Studio X also, because 1 second, I'll just drag it this side. Okay. I think I need my specs. Fine. So this is, if you see in the right side of the Studio X, you can find this data manager panel available. And these are the options available under the data manager. This is something used new to create a new variable or an argument, or if you want to create a kind of a config file, you can use this option with the connect to new Excel file. And this is something, again, you can create under this, like each and every variable type, scope. And if you want to define any default value as well, you can mention it here. And then it's the same. It's like collapsing and then expanding things in the panel. And the second is like refreshing. If you have created somewhere and then if you want to look at again the data manager, you just need to refresh so that the recently created variables and arguments will get displayed here. And this is what I mentioned as group items by scope. And then once if you open this and then if you create any variable on a workflow and just click group by, it will help you to group. It will show you all the variables arguments created under that workflow or to the scope. And this is again the sync with active scope. Uh, 1 second. As I told you, the resource and the resources that you can find in the orchestrator, right? Like queues and asserts, those can also be managed with same panel. You don't need to look for another panel. Like you can also refer to the same data manager. Earlier it was like resource panel, right? Now it's same with the data manager. It's not a separate panel. So you can find the assert queues and all the processes which are there in the existing and the connected folders. You can see all the folders which are connected to your tenant. So whatever folders you have in your tenant, it gets displayed here, and then and which the folder that you have connected your studio, right? So only to that folder specific, you can see the process and all the orchestrator resources here. And let me get, okay, this is what is about the data manager. So you will be, what to say, once you get into the development, the enterprise kind of a development, you will find this data manager is the most useful one, because whenever you develop, you will be coming across a lot of variable and argument creations. So you don't, you if once if you even debug, right, you need to get back and throw to the workflows that you have created. But once if this data manager comes into picture, it'll be very easy for you to get into a place and refer all the in and out arguments and the variables that you have created. So that's something that I really liked about the recent release. So this is something very important features that came up with StudioX as well. So let's continue further. But before I go ahead, I would like to ask you people if you have any queries with the slide so far, so that I can address them and then proceed further. I'll just check with the chat. Is there any query?
I'm good. Thank you.
Hi, this is
Hey, hi
Devi.
there.
I have sorry, I joined little late.
Okay.
In the new release, is there any debug functionality also included yet or not? Like we have in Studio?
Uh, Debugging functions, that's what one is with the workflow analyzer, where you will be able to filter out the rules and rule set for the project.
Yes.
But
Yes.
apart from that, I don't see
Huh.
what kind
Okay.
of debugging, what is it, debugging features that
The
been
deep
added.
Yes, the exactly what we have in Studio, the debug in which we can go one by one, step into in one activity, check what
Exactly.
exactly it can do. Yeah, that one. So yeah, I think that's again a suggestion for our
Yeah.
coming releases, I think. Yeah. Okay.
And there
Thank
are
you.
a few more things on in pipeline for the uh, do, before the stable release. So that, I mean, the LTS one. So maybe the features that you mentioned, right, they are still, it might get added as a pipeline so that we can feed them as once it comes to kind of a enterprise kind of an edition.
Great,
So for
great.
now, I didn't see that. Maybe if I get to know that, I'll just definitely mention that and then get back to you on
Yes,
that.
thank you. Actually, many of the citizen developer, uh, which I used to work with, so they usually ask about this feature. So actually, I myself used to train people on Studio X. So uh, many of the people come back to me and asking for this feature. Can we have this thing? So that's, I think, I'm very much looking forward in the coming releases.
Got
Thank
it.
you very much.
Yeah,
Yeah.
sure.
Palyappan, I have a
Yes, sir.
question that in new update there is an Outlook like in a old update the system required Outlook application, but the Outlook application is not free. Uh, I have getting that problem also in doing my project related to Outlook, and I am not getting the output because the project itself says that Outlook folder not found. So in new update, does this problem has been solved that the problem related to Outlook that
Hmm.
the Outlook should be installed or not? If
All
the
right.
system doesn't install Outlook, then the program will run or not?
Okay, I got your question. So if you see, even before to this release, right? If you don't have an Outlook application installed in your machine, you can still use activities that can interact with your Outlook. Either you can connect through an Exchange server or through modern authentication of an Exchange. But in recent times, Microsoft came up with an update that we won't be able to log in with a normal username and password credential. It has to be through an Azure Active Directory, and it has to go through a modern authentication. So for your question, even though you don't have an Outlook installed in your machine, you can still connect it through an existing activity. If you search as just in Studio Access, I'm telling, maybe in Studio we have separate activities. If you see here, you can use Office Outlook 365 or Desktop Outlook app. And if in Studio, right, you can use Exchange activities also, but that has to come from Microsoft Office 365 package. So Microsoft
Okay.
Office 365 package, it will be having Outlook's activity. That one second, maybe I'll try to show you that. It's Outlook 365, I believe the package name is right. Because since October, Microsoft has given an update that they won't be able to, I mean, any person, if they are trying to log in Outlook or to Exchange, then it has to go through a modern authentication. So maybe I'll try to explain you now in just another minute. I'll take 1 minute on this. But that was possible even before to this release. It's not that there is no specific feature released with this 22.10 on that, but it was already existing one.
Okay. No, I am getting the problem since last 2 3 days, because I was doing related to UiPath course, and there is a project related to Outlook for
So you're
getting the
using
mail
Studio or Studio X?
studio.
Okay. Okay, maybe meantime it loads, right? I'll just try to continue with the slide. Once it loads, I
Okay,
can
okay,
show you the activity which we can use without Outlook application. Fine.
okay, okay, okay.
Considering the time, interest of time. Okay. Yeah.
No, no.
Yeah. So, okay. Here is, yeah, just try to open existing one. Okay. Most of the, maybe once if you get into the enterprise kind of a development, right? You would have come across this since maybe the October, I guess October 12th, they gave an announcement that they won't be able to continue with the normal authentication. Just let me try to search for that package. Okay, let me try to install this and see. This is something, it involves Azure AD as well. That is something, if you're trying to run this bot from a specific Windows server, that server has to be tagged to the Azure AD. So only then you will be able to authenticate and then log into the mailbox and then fetch all the mails and access on it.
Okay,
But for now, if you can, maybe, I don't know, if it's something personal development, then you can try with the Exchange activities. But still that I got many feedbacks from people that they're finding it difficult to even access through Exchange activities because it now completely converted to modern authentication. You can just search in
Yeah,
browser that.
Palipan.
Yeah.
Hello. Yeah, we
Yes,
are
Ravi.
facing a issue regarding our environment is completely moving to O365. Previously, we are using Exchange, it's a fine, but after moving to O365 in cloud-based, we are facing issue, a lot of issue. For example, yeah, you said the Exchange is not working properly. And the second thing is the steps are too much. Like for example, creating the Azure and creating ID and convert to O365. It's a lot of process is happening.
Mm.
So
But there's
like,
something that everyone we were facing. So I think it has
yeah,
to be considered because every bot, once you run or even if you face any issue, it has to be notified through some medium.
yeah,
So it is included. We consider that as a separate project because we had so many bots and every bot has to be configured with this new
yeah,
modern authentication, right? So
exactly. So
so
the steps will be simplification is easy because previously the people will be just signing or Outlook and do it just username password they can work it easily. But now the steps are too the more steps and business people we need to inform the business people to agree everything. That's a very hard compared to the previous.
I got it. Yeah. Maybe Shafiqur, if you can allow me, then I can check for the exact package name and then mention to you maybe at the end of the session. Just
Okay,
give me
okay,
some
no
time. I
issue.
couldn't recollect it now, but I'm pretty sure that there is a package and we have used it and it was working perfectly fine,
Mm,
Okay,
even
no
if you
issue,
And
don't.
no.
and I have one more doubt. I'm creating a one project in StudioX.
Mhm.
Shall I use it in Studio? For example, in Studio, I will be creating one project. It will be mapped with the StudioX project.
Yeah, it is possible. Yeah,
Okay. So there is no need to open anything else.
no,
Just
no.
mapping, it's okay, fine.
Yeah,
Okay.
but one second.
Uh,
If it is from Studios to Studio X or Studio X to Studio.
Studio to StudioX.
Mm,
I'm
okay.
just running the project in Studio. I am adding in Studio X project here.
The otherwise is possible, but there might be some compatibility issue.
Okay, Studio X to Studio, it's possible.
Yep.
Okay, fine.
Yep. Fine. Okay. So I'll just get you that package name, Shafiqur, and let's continue further. If there is
Okay,
any question, if not, then I can proceed.
no, no, no question.
All right. Fine. So this is interesting feature and something very important. I'll just try to sum it up. Okay. So missing activity improvements. Say for example, now a person A has developed a bot in certain versions and the packages involved in that project is of lesser version. And then now the project is getting migrated to a latest version. And then once if you open that specific project in the new version, you might be seeing a lot of message and a red color description that missing activities, right? But it will be very tough to identify what are the activities which are actually missing. Though you have the repair option, the repair option won't be able to identify all the activities. Still few activities will be left, like there are few activities missing under the scope. So now with this new feature in Studio X, and it is also there in Studio, of course, in Studio X, if you see, now it's upgraded in a way like you will also be notified with the activity name. Though it is missing, though the version is not compatible, it will show you still the name of the activity so that you can refer to that package of that activity and then upgrade that specific package. Early it was like you will not you will not have any idea and what activity is actually missing. But now you will know the activity name so that you can upgrade the relevant package in the managed packages. There's something very interesting because this will help many people who are migrating from one version to another. And then more than that, along with the activity name, they are also trying to retain you the properties like arguments and variables. So if you have passed any values like default values or any variables to that activity, this feature will help you to retain those values also so that you don't need to ask the other developer and then ask him or her to know the arguments or variables designed and then created under that activity. It will be still be able to refer in the missed activity. So you'll be knowing the activity name and also the variables that are passed to that specific activity. So you just need to see the activity name and then upgrade the relevant package in the manage packages. So it's as simple as that. So let's go for the activities. Now all the features with the StudioX is over. So these are the new features that got added with StudioX. So if you are exploring and working on StudioX, or if you're training your business people with StudioX, do mention these features so that they will be really finding it useful. Because what I have seen with the features, like most of them are like very helpful in a way, like it saves a lot of time in minute works. You don't need to look for activities while debugging. You just color code is fine, and then you don't need to look for variables across. Or you can refer the data manager itself, and then workflow analyzer is something that is really important for companies who are looking on a compliance basis. So they can look for the rules, whether it is applied or not, and then they can restrict the packages to be uploaded in the workflow analyzer. So because most of the business people, when they're developing, they will be still aligned with the company policies, right? So that workflow analyzer feature is something very important. So do mention that so that they can make use of those features. Now let's focus on the activities in a way. Like these are the activities that got recently added with this 22.10 release, so that you can make use of it, because early it was more on classic folders, or you need to enable the show developer option in the activity panel, or you have to look for a custom components. But now UiPath had ensured that you can easily find those activities with this release itself. You don't need to create a separate script or a code, or you don't need to get it from any custom components. You can directly get it from UiPath itself. I mean, by default itself. So the first thing, filtering collections. So this activity was included with Studio in specific, not in StudioX. So the reason is filter collection is something more on a technical side, right? So you'll be using list in most of your projects, where if you feel like you'll be including the input data one after the another, but you're not sure how many of them will be added. So you'll be using list variables across your projects. But if you want to filter it out, or convert that to a data table, or you need to merge, or you need to build a new collection, so you will be using a lot of syntax and then manipulating things. But now you have you special activities for those features. Like if you want to filter any collection, you can use this filter collection activity, or if you want to convert that to a data table, you can use this collection to data table, and then removing from collection and appending item to collection. You can use all these activities which are available by default. You can just need to search as collection in your machine, and it displays you all the activities which are available for this. And the next one is filter pivot table. Early it was like we have for create pivot table, but we don't have for filter pivot table. And this is available in StudioX as well, so that business people who really wants to perform filter and manipulate data in their pivot tables, they can use this filter pivot table activity. But provided you need to have the Excel package to the latest version. Only then you'll be able to see this activity in your activity panel. So make sure that your Excel package is updated to the recent version, and then you can find this filter pivot table activity there, and then you can make use of this to filter your columns and rows with the pivot table. So this is something that will be very useful for the business people who are working on Excels and tables. So do mention this if you're training anyone, if you're working on StudioX. And then modern Excel package. So if you see here, if you want to invoke any kind of a VB script, and then if you want to know get a color code of a cell, early it was like you need to get into activity panel, click on the filter, and then enable show classic or show developer mode, and then only then you'll be able to look at all these activities. I mean, invoke VB and get cell color. But now by default, they have included this in modern Excel package itself. You don't need to enable any feature. You just open StudioX or Studio, search for this activity, you'll be able to see it. You don't need to enable or disable any feature in your for this. Or you don't need to configure any feature for this to visible in your activity panel. So that is something with the activities which got recently released, which is 22.10. So before I go ahead with the robot assistant, I would like to address if you have any queries so far. Meantime, also check with the chat if there is any query. Yeah, okay.
No, we are good. Thank you.
All right. Great then. So now let's get into the robot assistant. What are the features that got added? But before we get into this robot assistant, right, I would just like to highlight one thing very important. Most of the features that when I tried to explore with robot assistant, like it was more on the enterprise level. So say for example, if you have multiple tenants, or only if you have action centers, and only if you have automation ops enabled with these governance features and policies, you will be able to look at some of the features that we are going to discuss now. But I would like to highlight those features so that if anytime in future, if you're using this, or if you're looking for these features in your robot assistant, then it will be really helpful for you. So this is more on a attended bot developer perspective. So I hope everyone will be working on both unattended and attended bots. So attended bots is something very important in terms of a business case, because most of the business people would like to host the attended bots, right? So UiPath came up with this release in a way like they enable those business people to access and then work with assistant in a very easier way. So that is what I found when I tried to explore with this robot assistant features. And I hope you will get to understand this one by one in the upcoming slides. So first thing is tenant picker. So if you have multiple tenants created for your organization in your orchestrator, and if you want to switch between the tenants, and if you want to look at the processes, and if you want to look at the other entities of your tenant or the folders, then you will be able to choose that tenant from drop down that is highlighted here. You don't need to get into orchestrator, or you don't need to sign out and sign in with the tenant URL. You can directly choose it here so that it gets automatically reconnected to that tenant. So this is something very important, and it's applicable, and you will be able to see this option if you have multiple tenants. Because when I tried, I was having only single tenant and I couldn't able to see this. And then I cross-checked, it was more for multiple tenants. So that's the reason. And I hope you won't be able to even see this in your assistant. But if you have multiple tenant hosted in your orchestrator, then you will be definitely able to see this. This is the first feature that I want to highlight in a robot assistant. And coming up next is the, okay, what happened? Okay. Process migration to personal workspace. Okay, say for example, you have undergoing a migration in your orchestrator, and meantime, you want to run some attended bots in your local machine. And for that reason, you have published those packages in your local machine itself. It's not that you haven't published to the tenant or to the orchestrator. It has been published in your local machine itself. And now, once you feel like orchestrator is set and everything is done, and if you want to move that specific package from your local machine to your personal workspace or any folder in your orchestrator, you got an option UiPath Assistant to migrate it. You don't need to open Studio and then do it. Just from UiPath Assistant itself, you will be able to migrate that from your local to your personal workspace in your orchestrator. So I'll just try to show you that. All right, I think I have already installed it. Fine. So I'll just show you the place where you can actually migrate. Once if you open the UiPath Assistant, you can see this preference option. And then in that preference option, you will be able to, one second, it's loading. Yeah. This is something very useful if most of the attended bots are hosted in your local machine, and if you feel like it has to be managed, and then if you want to get into the logs and then prepare any report, you can easily migrate it from UiPath Assistant itself. So if you see here in the tools section, you can find an option called migrate your automations to your cloud account. And this will get enabled the moment when you publish to your local machine. And And once you publish and open the assistant, you're coming up with a pop-up, and this tool section will help you to migrate to your personal workspace in your orchestrator. So this is something very useful if you want to publish or move your personally saved packages to the orchestrator feed. So this is the second feature with the robot assistant, which I felt something very interesting. Okay. This is something every Action Center service user will be looking for, because whenever you assign a task to any business people or to any analyst or any SMEs, they need to log in and then get into orchestrator and then see how many tasks is been still pending and assigned and how many of them are completed. But now with this 22.10 release, you will be able to see how many of them are pending, unassigned, and completed in the widgets of UiPath Robot Assistant itself. And this option can be enabled if you have automation ops in your system, and also you can apply the relevant policies and restrict the user level and accesses. So this is what I mentioned, that I couldn't find a place where I can show you a demo, but I would like to really highlight this feature so that if you get to see this, or if you're looking for this, provided all the other features are available, then please ensure that you have this as added feature, added widgets in your robot assistant, so that you will be able to look at the actions which are pending in your bucket. So this is very important and interesting one for the people who are validating and validating the documents and all the performance of a document understanding person, even if there's any ML kind of a bot being used apart from document understanding, this action center will be very helpful for you. So once if you have configured all the other features, please ensure that you have included this feature in your assistant so that it'll save a lot of time for you. So let me take you to the next one. This is also again something very interesting if people are connecting to the closed network. Like you have a lot of proxy restrictions and then firewall restrictions. If you want to connect your robot to a network which is something like a closed network or with any restrictions, and if your robot is installed in a user mode, this pop-up will automatically come when you open the robot assistant. So this pop-up in a way will help you to connect to that closed network by mentioning the username and password for that VPN. So this will be helpful for people who work more on remote areas and then remotely, sorry, not remote, remotely, and then people who are working more on a closed network. So more on a highly confidential data managing and all those things. So once you open the robot assistant, you get this pop-up and there you can get into this, but provided that robot and the components has to be installed on a user mode, only then it will take directly from your machine and then show you this pop-up. If it is something installed in a service mode, right, then it has to be, all these proxy details has to be configured in a config.file. That is one specific file in your UiPath setup folder. There you need to configure if it is installed in a service mode. I'll try to share the link of that one so that you can understand what is this is actually about. Maybe I will also try to give you how this uh, cross-platform also works. So this is something, a document from UiPath, which will be helpful for you. So please feel free to refer this if you are working more on closed networks and if you are working on cross platforms. Fine. So let me proceed further. But before that, is there any queries so that I can address them before I proceed? I'll check with the chat either.
No questions on the chat. Feel free to unmute yourself and ask in case of any questions.
Yep. All right, I take that as everything's fine.
Actually, I don't have question on this one, but I was trying the feature while you spoke, switching between the panels when we were speaking about data manager. Would you be able to show that just once, please?
Switching between
This was when
panels.
you, yeah, if you could go back to the data manager, right? No, your PPT. I can just highlight which feature I was quickly trying.
Okay.
Not a feature, but I would just say that you toggle between it, but it's not happening for me. Just a second.
Okay.
One second. Group by variable and arguments. Can you just give me one example?
Okay. Maybe I'll show you that. But there's something
Yeah.
I can, yeah, I can show you that with Studio, because I believe in Studio X, we won't be able to create multiple workflows, right? But with this something more on a
Uh-huh.
data manager perspective. So I was trying to explain more on data manager, which can be used both in Studio X and Studio. But Studio X has, say, if there are 10 features in data manager, only 8 to 9 are applicable with Studio X based on
Mm-hmm.
its application restrictions, right? So in Studio X, you won't be able to create multiple workflows, huh? But still you can group by the variables based on the scope. I'll just try to show you that. I hope you got my point, but I still show you that.
No, I got it. Yes, got it. Because I was just wondering
It
it
was it
for
was not
Studio
more on
X.
workflow, but if you have
Right.
different scopes, right, and if you try to create that, then you will
Hmm.
be able to group by those variables and arguments for that specific scope. And like how
Okay.
you group by a table, right? For one
Hmm.
value, you'll have group by of values for that one specific value. In a similar way, you can do it, but not on
Okay.
workflow levels, because workflow is not possible with Studio if I'm not wrong.
Hmm. Got it.
It's more on one specific workflow, right? Even if you see, I'll take a minute on
Mm-hmm.
this, because we have 2 more slides left. So I just take a minute on this. Meantime, okay, is there any other query so that I can try to show that as well? I'm sorry that it takes time to switch between Studio and Studio X. Yeah. All right, it's open. All right. So, okay, this is data manager, right? Just try to create a variable here. Okay, variable 1, type text, and scope is main. But maybe I will try to create some where first variable is created. Okay, and then I'll try to include some. Okay, now it's called group, right? It's not a sequence anymore. I'll just try to create a group here. Okay, and then again a new variable, but the scope is this time group. Okay, variable group 1, and then I'll try to create one more. Again, this is with group. Just click OK. Now if I just try to group by, right, you can see the variables created under the group. So this is what I meant as group by. So you can see the variable 1 created under the main workflow.
Okay.
And inside this sequence that is now been upgraded as groups. There is no more sequence. You call it as group in Studio X, right? So you can
Right.
see all the variables that created under that specific scope, so that you can
Mm-hmm.
group by those scope and get to see what are the variables which are created. Say, for example, you have hundreds of sequences in Studio X, and you want to know for one specific sequence, because in Studio X, when you're recommending business people to develop a bot, right, it has to be in a way like if they're accessing Excel, it has to be one specific group. If they're accessing Outlook, it has to be only with Outlook group. So
Okay.
when they're working on Outlook, if they want to refer a variable from Excel group, so they can get into data manager and then group by, and then under that specific group, they can get to know the variables which got created. So
Correct. So just a basic question. I mean, some may sound new, but still, this scoping that we are doing, that is only for managing the variables, right? Now, it doesn't have to do anything with literal terms of scope. Like I can use it outside the Excel scope also, right? If I am saving some data
of
and
course you
reusing
can,
it.
right?
Huh.
But
Okay, okay, okay.
when you are manipulating that variable, right, at one point,
Hmm,
you need to open the panel and then look for and then do it. It takes
hmm,
more time compared to this, right? It
right.
saves your time in a way, like you can refer to one place where you can
Hmm,
manipulate all these things.
got it.
Early, we
Yes.
didn't have any group by with the variables that we create. It was like either sort by only. It was not group by. So
Right. It
now
was
we
like
have,
independent.
yeah.
Right.
So it's now like group by. So for each scope, you can group by it.
Hmm,
And you can also sort it out, or you can even filter it out based on what you would like to see. Either it is variables or arguments, you can even filter it out. So
mhm.
all these features are now with the data manager itself. You don't need to get into any other panels.
Got it. That helps me. Thank you.
Yeah, great. So okay, I can see two chats. How to delete files from a folder. Okay, this is something may not be to the context, but I'll just try to mention it. If you just search as files in the activity, right, you can see a lot many activities under this. If you can see here, for each file in a folder, you can just drag it and then you can mention the folder path. And inside that loop, you can include just delete file so that you can delete all the files in a folder. So it's as simple as that. Just two activities is fine. Hope that answers your query, Pavani Mitra.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, fine. Let's continue the call. Um, I'll just try to minimize these. Okay. Okay. So I think we have discussed this. Fine. Picture in picture virtual desktop. Okay. This is something really very interesting one. More on people who work with PIP, right? That's called picture in picture. So early it was like a separate session has to be created for picture in picture, and then you can see the bot running in that separate session. But now with this 22.10 release, there are two features have come up with this PIP. One is the existing one, which is called new session. Another one is new desktop. So what is meant by the new desktop? New desktop, we call it as virtual desktop. In your Windows machine, you can create actually a virtual kind of a session in your local laptops itself. So that if you want to run multiple PIP sessions, then you can use this new desktop PIP compatibility so that you can run on different or multiple PIP sessions. So earlier it was like one PIP separate session was running, and now it is like multiple PIP sessions can be ran, and at the same time you can remotely log in and you can use that system. It's not that you don't need to what to say, if multiple people wants to run, now this feature came up in a way like it enables them to run on a multiple processor and then at the same time simultaneously. So
Only I have a
yeah,
doubt. Okay, it's unattended robot. The process is running in PAP mode. So at the time, I can log in the VD and working on some other else. It's possible.
no, not really. See,
Oh,
unattended bot, this PIP is more for an attended kind of a bot. It
okay.
cannot come under unattended because when you use an unattended bot in a user specific user in a user session, that bot will be completely I'm sorry, that the session will be
Okay.
completely occupied with that license, and then no other bot can even run. Even an
Okay.
unattended bot can't run in that session. It has to be like a high density robot environment where you have multiple users in one single server. Say, for example, there is one Windows machine and you are an user ID, I am an user ID. And you can run multiple bots between the user ID, but not in one single user ID. So that applies the same for PAP also. If you are running an unattended bot in your user ID, in the same user ID, you cannot run PAP. But in a different user ID of that machine, I can run. Okay, to make it very clear, say for example, you have a laptop A, and that laptop A has three different users: user A, user B, and user C. And then that laptop A is now set into a high density environment in your orchestrator. And all those three user ID are tagged with an unattended boards. Now, if you are trying to run one process in user A, it will run. And if you want to run another process simultaneously in the same laptop, then it has to be with a different user, not with the same user, right? That is what is high density concept is. The same applies for PIP also. PIP is something is more on an attended one, right? It cannot take on the background UIs and the activities, right? It can only take the attended one, foregrounds. So you cannot merge unattended and PIP together. Hope that answers yours.
Thank you.
Okay. So you can enable this option when within the Studio X itself. I will just show you like where you can enable this. Once you open the Studio X, right, in the project tab, in the design tab, you can see an option called project. Under that, open the project settings, and in general, you can choose this, whether it is a new session or a new desktop. And if you want to know more about it, I will try to provide you the link for the document. You get to understand a better way in a step-by-step manner. But this is something going to be very useful people who are working more on attended boards so that they can run multiple sessions at the same time. Fine. So let's proceed further. Okay. Diagnostic tool. This is something very useful for any kind of an admin team because every organization will have an infrastructure being set and an admin team to manage that, right? So if you want to know like how this robot assistant works through a diagnostic tool, you don't need to get a separate application to diagnose this, and then you don't need to get the event logs from a separate place. That has been enabled now with the robot assistant itself. If you want to see the event logs of the robot, like how it is connected to orchestrator and how it is connected to studio, that you can get it from the UiPath robot assistant itself. So if you see here, there is an option under preference where you can see, one second, I think it's with general. Yep. Fine. So once you open the preference, right, you can get into the help tab where you can click on the start diagnostic tool, which will give you all the event logs of this robot assistant in a way like how it is connected, what are the execution logs and how many logs saved and how it is interacting with studio. This will be very useful for our infrastructure team. So early it was like they were using a separate tool to get all these event logs, but now they can get it from robot assistant itself. You just need to start this and it will start importing in a way like a zip file. So either you can save in the location where you want to save it and it starts diagnosing and it will show you all the details in a separate window session itself. So meantime it runs, I'll try to explain the next feature, and once if this is over, I can show you like how the diagnostic tool works. So you can refer to your infra team if they are working on any kind of a diagnosis on UiPath components, especially with assistant, like how it is interacting with orchestrator and what is the heartbeat and all those things. Fine. Well and good. I think we are done. Okay. Yeah, I think it's over. Let's try to show you the diagnostic tool alone, and then post that. I think we can look onto the questions if you have any. So now it's over, and then if I just try to extract this, right? Right. Now you can see all the details, the log files, application logs, and this can be used for their analysis purpose. So if you have any infra team and if they are trying to diagnose the robot connection, they can refer this panel in the robot assistant itself. So it makes them easy. Now let's get into the Q&A session. I think we are good. We are done. I'll try to address the questions if you have any. I'll
Yeah.
just check the chat.
No.
Rahul here.
Hey, yes, Rahul.
Yeah, so this PIP mode, currently we have two categories, right? One is run in new session as well as in new desktop.
Virtual desktop. Yeah.
Yeah. So is it available in StudioX as well?
No, that was for Studio. I was showing in StudioX only.
Oh,
It is
okay. In
available
StudioX.
both in Studio and StudioX, but I was showing in StudioX only. I'll just show you. Wait.
Okay.
This is StudioX only, right? So if you see here,
Mhm.
I can see in the project settings, and then under the general, you can see pip type. You can run it.
Oh, okay. So
It's more
here
on
we need
attended
to...
boards, right? So you can use it in both StudioX and Studio as well. It's possible.
Okay, okay.
Hi, Palani, Jobin here.
Hey, hi, Jobin. Yes.
Palani, one question from the project compatibility.
Mhm.
So when you are showing a new StudioX project, right, we will be seeing three options over there, right?
Mhm.
So on UiPath Studio, the Windows legacy option will no longer available for new projects, starting with our new release, right?
That's true.
So
Yep.
is this applicable for StudioX as well?
I didn't see that being mentioned with the release notes, but probably,
Okay.
as you said, the Windows legacy itself will stop because it will be, they will include all the activities which are compatible with all the other platforms. So they don't need a separate type called Windows legacy. So any activities you include with that project, it is still compatible with other platforms. So that's what they would have mentioned, that Windows legacy will not be there in the new release now, right? So that is not mentioned in the release note, but I believe soon it will be even deleted with Studio X as well. So
Yeah,
that they'll include all the activities, and the package will be more compatible in other cross platforms as well.
got it. So in that case, we can expect a utility or something to convert the legacy to Windows, same like UiPath Studio.
Yep. We can,
Okay.
of course. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Great. I think, Rohit, we are good now. Yeah.
Palani,
Yes.
one more thing, Rahul here.
Yes, Rahul.
So, as per my understanding, mostly these citizen developers will be using this Studio X, right?
Mhm.
So, for an example, like that person is having some coding skill, and if he need to use the studio as well, studio activities as well,
Mhm.
maybe in future, will there be any provision like we can enable those activities that are available in studio that will help the citizen developers to use those activities as well?
Mm. You can see an option here in the Studio X called Show Developer, right?
Mm-hmm.
With this, in this Studio X, you can also look at the activities which are available in Studio. So once if you enable this, you can see all the activities which are there in the Studio also. So Studio X, you can include all the complex kind of an activity in Studio X as well. So with just enabling this property, that should be fine.
Okay, so it means all the activities that is available in Studio will be
Yeah.
accessible in Studio X as well, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So this option is meant for that only. So you can include all the activities. If you feel like you feel like some of the activities are missing here, which are there in Studio, you can just enable this and we can use them now.
Okay.
Great.